right. Hi, Jake. Welcome to the back to the podcast.
It's great to be back. I was just going to ask you a question if you get the video or just the audio, but here we are anyways. Hope my hair is nice for you.
Here we are. Here we are. It's just audio, so you're good anyway. But yeah. So welcome back. Of course, the audience knows you and Carissa. But for just a quick reminder, it's going to play into the rest of what we're talking about today. Remind everyone how long you have been real estate coaching and/or running real estate teams.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I was just thinking about this in preparation for a training I'm doing tomorrow. And technically speaking, this whole coaching and leadership journey started basically almost 10 years ago. Now, the locker room itself didn't exist until August of 2016, but prior to that, I was still leading, managing, working with agents and their goals and stuff. So I'd say for the better part of 10 years.
Yeah, that's awesome. So lots and lots of agents, hundreds, thousands at this point.
Yeah. Who knows anymore, but a safe bet would be we have worked with tens of thousands of agents.
Yeah.
That for sure is accurate.
Yeah, that's amazing. So this is, of course, it's real estate focused because of who we are, but I really think what we're going to talk about today applies to definitely any sales career, but also any kind of work environment that is focused on achievement and accomplishment, which we live in the Western Hemisphere. So I think that's all of them.
I would agree. I think anything we do, and I know I'll do my best to make it not just real estate specific, but this is applicable to any of your listeners who have ever been in a situation that's performance based. And last time I checked, whether you're self-employed or you've got a great job and a boss telling you what to do and all that, it still applies because there's pressure that others place on us, let alone the pressure we put on ourselves to perform.
Yep. So I've had two conversations with friends, both former agents I've trained and then became friends in the last month, where they have either moved on to other opportunities. They're sort of still in real estate, but they're also doing other things. That was one of them. And then one has moved to a whole other market and she's doing some things and then also a little bit real estate. Both of them have told me that with these changes, they are just so much happier, so much more relaxed because it's so much less hustle. Like the market, and my one friend, she's actually in the Keys in Florida, which I was surprised to hear it's not very hustly down there, but apparently it's not. And she was just so loving it. And then the other one is moved into like medical sales, which again, I was surprised didn't feel as hustly to her, but didn't. So yeah, let's talk about that. We are in an industry that is known for that hustle mindset.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. And in reference to your two examples there, I think the takeaway for me that what I just heard you say is in our environment matters.
Yes.
And there's a lot of things that can make up our environment. I mean, literal environment, like where you live, work, and play, of course.
Yep.
But other people might state it differently of like who we choose to surround ourselves with.
Yep.
It's a lot of the intangible evidence out there where your environment matters. It shapes you, the language, the clothes you wear, your energy, your enthusiasm of where you go to work every single day and who you choose to do it with. So I think that can't be discounted. I know there's a lot of change through the COVID era rather, and losing some of those in-person opportunities. And when we lose those in-person get-togethers and whatnot, connection can be easily lost.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people, thank goodness now, are getting back to some level of normalcy. And yet a lot of people are also rediscovering themselves along the way and reestablishing who is my sphere of influence? What is my network? Maybe I'd never realized before how much what I thought were my friends are really people that were kind of holding me back or pulling me backwards. And so I just think the environment itself is taking into consideration. Your listeners need to ask some questions to themselves, maybe around my environment. If you feel unsettled or restless and that there's more and better out there for you, take a look around. What's your environment look like?
Yeah. And I would add to that because 100%, these were friends of mine from a very hustly brokerage. We all worked together and I was the sales director for both of them. And it was a hustle environment. We valued grit and grind and hustle and all of those things. And I know a lot of people who burned out on that, but I also know that brokerage is not unique. That hustle mindset is it's just pervasive. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think there's this, I mean, you said earlier, we're in the Western Hemisphere, so this natural thirst for pursuit of success and whatever that means, right? Money, let's say, for most people is what they equate success to. But I think that environment is one of achievement, and I'm all about that. And I fall victim to that as well. What's it all for? You know, what are we driving for? But if we lose ourselves along the way just to say we did it, or stand on the top of the mountain and be the only one planting our flag, and everybody else is down at base camp, like, what is this for? And so, I guess I can't really say or speak for other organizations of why grit and hustle and the grind are their core values, but to me, it just sheds light on alignment and making sure whatever opportunities come your way, it's not just the shiny object, it's not just the base salary plus bonus or whoever's got the highest commission split that you're after. You've got to really make sure that your core values align with that of the organization, and really the person who's leading that organization, because everything else falls downhill.
Yeah, yes, 100%. And like you and I were talking about before we hit record, that I think one of the biggest misunderstandings about hustle versus not hustle is working a lot. And like I told you, there I have worked 16-hour days and loved every second, been totally in flow. It was exactly what needed to happen. And I've worked 16-hour days where it was a literal grind and I was just beat at the end of it. So hustle isn't about how much you work, it's that matter of inspiration behind the work.
Exactly right. And I think one of the missing factors to that and what your prior question was is there actual buy-in? Or is it, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a 1099 independent contractor, cleverly disguised when I'm actually an employee of someone else's. I'm running and driving their agenda. And Monica, you and I make many mistakes, but something I've learned through my journey certainly is the time and the place to collaborate, the time and the place to really seek the input and buy-in from everyone so they feel their DNA is in that goal, in that desired outcome just as much as yours. It's not Jake's, goal, it's our goal. And when you get that buy-in from whoever it is, or you yourself are buying into your leader's vision, for me, that takes it from this grind. I think of gears and the friction and the rust buildup and all of that grind noise that's celebrated, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And to me, it takes it to that little bit softer word, like you said, which is hustle. Like, my sister loves running. I think it's weird. She runs like 10 miles a day, but
That's
that's her
insane.
hustle. That's her time. That's her chance to pop in the earbuds and, I guess, relax in a weird, awkward way. But that's not grinding and grueling to her, whereas it might be to somebody else. So what race are you running, and who are you running it with? Look to your right and your left.
Oh, I love that. Which race are you running and who are you running with? One of my favorite business principles I learned years and years ago from Tony Hsieh, the founder of Zappos. In his book, he talked about changing tables. He's talking about gambling, being in Vegas, and you're losing at the poker game. You don't have to stay at that table. You can get up and change tables. And that has been such a factor when I've found myself hitting wall after wall or trying to talk about holistic business in environments that did not appreciate that talk. Well, eventually you just have to get up and leave the table. You have to go find another game to play.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's such a great point. I love that analogy back at you. And it makes me think of the quote. I can't remember at this point who says it, but one of the greats. And that is, we're not a product of our circumstances, we're a product of our decisions. I
Mm.
can decide to get up from that table, or I could sit at that table feeling like a victim, that I'm just a victim of the circumstance. No, say, I'd like to cash out, take my chips over here to the next table, and next thing you know, you got blackjack.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so true. And I've seen that with this one company in particular, a lot of agents felt that way. At first, they felt like they couldn't leave. And then when they finally convinced themselves they did, they may or may not have stayed in real estate, but they will all tell you they feel like they're thriving now in
Sure.
a different environment, whether it's a different company or a different career.
Now I'm going to turn the blackjack tables on us here for a minute. I'm trying to use
Okay.
the same analogies and language. But look, so I don't want to feed into that same narrative. So popular or unpopular opinion, let's just make sure that it should never, in my opinion, it should never get to that point, if at all you can help it. What do I mean, Jake? What I mean is, if you've got all this pent up frustration because your boss or the leader or this and that and the other thing, you've got some DNA in that as well. My hope for
Mhm.
you is you have this foundation of trust, or you just have the guts to go to that person before it's too late, and before you say deuces, I'm out of here, you
Yeah.
stink. Give them a chance to course correct, give them a chance to explain the why. Speak up and go to your leader or whomever this applies to and say, look, I'm not sure I'm on the same page here. Could you help me understand? Or are we at a crossroads? Because I'll bring this up, Monica, and I know you, I think you believe in this as well. A lot of people from our both of our backgrounds could be quick to throw something like the culture card at you and I,
Yeah.
because you and I once upon a time made a decision ourselves, not without warning, which is what I'm talking about,
Yep.
to move, to switch companies or go somewhere else, right? And yet the other person naturally probably didn't like that very much, and so they could be quick to throw the culture card at you and say, how could you, you're so out of culture and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And I just want to remind everybody, it's maybe that's true, maybe it's not, but they're also going to throw the loyalty card.
Yes.
I thought I was so loyal to you, Monica. How could you? I thought you were so loyal to us back. What are we really saying here? Well, what's the opposite of loyalty? It's betrayal.
Yep.
That is a very strong, convicted word, betrayal. So you're accusing me of betrayal when you speak about this culture card or this loyalty card?
Yep.
Wait a minute.
Yep.
All I did was make a decision that I felt was going to better support my dreams and my family. And now you're basically accusing me of being a traitor or somebody who's betraying you. Come on.
Yeah.
Really, what it is about, it's alignment. Am I still aligned with the
Yep.
goals of the leader, the goals of the organization? Am I still aligned with their value and belief systems? If so, then you deserve to speak up and let that person know that maybe something is currently unsettled,
Yeah.
because the foundation is built on something much stronger.
Yeah, that's awesome. And especially in industries like ours where it is so easy to just it is easy to pick up your cards and go home or go to the next table or whatever. But understanding, and this is what where I really believe in the holistic business approach, is that as our friend Ruben says, that radical extreme ownership. What did I contribute? How did we get here? Is there something I can fix first? Because let's be honest, if I'm not willing to fix my willingness to believe what everybody else tells me about hustle and grind and etc., then I might change companies, but I'm just going to fall into whatever trap they have
Right.
also, because no company's perfect. So I need to fix my own in that scenario, my own ability to just fall into whatever's being pandered or sold in that situation, and learn how to stand for myself. Then I can stand strong wherever I am.
Exactly. And it's getting clear on your, and you're so good at this, Monica. I mean, you pour into everybody on a weekly basis through your podcast and social media. Like, you're so clear about who you are, what you want, and why you want it. It's something I greatly admire. And what I think I just heard you say is something that I know you and I deeply believe in here, which is operating in a strength zone.
Mm-hmm.
It's through trials, through failures, through disappointments. Actually, every time, just like dating, I learned more and more what I do want and what I absolutely don't want. I get more and more clarity. So, the strength zone concept is something that we latch onto very strong, which I think adds to this whole conversation around burnout. If you're not doing something that you naturally love or enjoy, or you're doing things that don't exactly give you positive energy,
Yep.
why? Go find something that does. I hate to be overly simplistic, but look, our opinion here is that success does not have to live outside of your comfort zone like everybody else wants you to believe. I think it's absolute garbage. Well, Jake, what do we believe instead? Great question. We believe that your success doesn't live outside your comfort zone, but it rather lives inside of your strength zone and expanding your strength zone. So if you want to maybe hit on that, Monica, so
Yeah.
I don't blab all day, feel free.
No, I mean, I tell agents and even brokers this every single week. You and I joked before we hit record. I made some cold calls today. Not my strength zone, not a tactic I will use on a regular basis, but in that moment, something I just felt like I needed to start and just be open to. And that is an example of expanding that strength zone. Like I said, it will never be my zone of genius, but it's okay to add that skill to my tool belt if I decide I want to. And it didn't feel like hustle. I felt sick to my stomach. I did not want to, but it also felt good to be done and to say, look, this thing that I thought I couldn't do, I could do. And that's the difference, I think, in hustle. At the end, when you're hustling, at the end, you feel depleted. You feel like we talked about eating through lunch versus, or I'm sorry, working through lunch versus feeling like you literally need to eat to get energy. And today, even though cold calling is not my favorite, at the end of it, I didn't feel depleted. I felt excited. I was excited for my next call because I had done something that I found difficult. Whereas in a very similar environment, I've made those cold calls and wanted to curl up under my desk and cry for the next 2 days. So it all comes from that alignment and that intuitive nudge.
You know, it's a great example, and it makes me think because I share a back wall here with a gym. Believe it or not, there's a gym on the other side of
I
my
never
wall
knew
right now.
that.
Oh yeah. So I see people coming and going and working out for 30 minutes, maybe an hour a day, something like that. And to your point, whether cold calling, for example, is ever a consistent or robust chunk of your day, that's for you to decide. But I've got to believe most of these people coming and going working out don't necessarily enjoy it, but they know after 30 minutes of working out, they're going to leave here feeling a whole lot better, not only about their own self-confidence, but also taking care of the temple that they've been given for years and years to come. So I think we got to get real clear on the difference of I just don't like doing it, so I'm going to stomp my feet and play victim versus no, I'm going to do it because I know it's necessary. I know it's required. I'm going to build more skill sets because of it. I'm going to gain more experiences because of it, and being able to decipher between the two.
Yeah. Yeah. And we can get into a little bit of strategy around how to recognize hustle and the burnout when you're on the road to burnout and how to bring yourself back. But I will say, kind of, and I know you have a few thoughts on this, but my number one thing is understanding. This was actually a huge aha for me in the last 2 weeks, but understanding the difference in my emotionality and my intuition. Because we use similar words to describe both of those. I don't feel like cold calling versus I feel like sitting on the couch and reading my book. Like those can both come from emotionality or they can both come from intuition. And so being able to understand the difference is, in my opinion, that's the real work that we have. And when we learn how to really tune in, that's when we can work from a place of abundance and not force ourselves into that burnout.
That's so good. And I think it's similar to like your breath work, right? You're big on this breath work and taking care of yourself. And that's a prevention mechanism to before burnout even, just breathe, just
Yeah.
center yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
And anyways, I just totally lost my train of thought of what I was going to say. So,
Yeah.
but
So we were talking about strategies to, and our industry, it's fine. Like agents real estate agents in particular, how can they recognize burnout? And then how can they create the life they want without feeling that hustle and burnout mentality?
yeah, yeah. Well, I think you're hitting on a lot of it. But just to here's the smack between the eyes. I think a lot of it is definitely taking care of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked environment, we've talked about strength zone, doing the things that you don't have to dread every day, but rather that give you energy and they come natural to you, right? But one thing we haven't really talked about yet is taking care of yourself. When's the
Yeah.
last time, you know, if a person loves golfing, when's the last time you've been golfing? When's the last time you've been fishing? When's the last time you went shopping with your friends? Like whatever you enjoy doing, if you're listening to this right now, when's the last time you've done that?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I hope this isn't the case, but unfortunately, a large percentage of people, as we're coaching them, scratch their head and say, "Ooh, actually, I can't remember," or "not often enough." And that, I think there's a lesson in that that we can take note of in this spirit of how do I prevent burnout? Would you
Yeah.
agree with that, I guess?
Yeah. And a lot of times the answer is, I don't even know what I enjoy anymore
Yeah.
because it's been that long. I hear that a lot from moms in particular because there's so much caretaking, whether they are working or not. They forget what they like to do outside of their children and then their work.
Right.
So yeah, taking care of yourself, like I said, I have come to believe that that is our true work. The
Mhm.
work is, and it's we use an athlete analogy a lot, which works great for the locker room. But athletes, they are paid to eat correctly, work out correctly, rest correctly. Like these athletes, Derrick Henry's a big guy here in Nashville, of course, literally big guy, but also, of course, big. We all love Derrick Henry. I mean, you see him in the off season, and they are posting about how much he's lifting, how much he's resting, like all of it. And we as entrepreneurs, real estate agents, broker owners, just entrepreneurs, we need to switch our mindsets and treat ourselves like the athlete.
Mhm.
What do I need? What routine, what rituals, I don't love routines, but rituals do we need to be the person we want to be to accomplish the things we want to accomplish?
You're so right. Yeah, if we just study the game, whether it's athletics or anybody that's just at the pinnacle of their game, they're the master of their craft. How do they practice? How do they take care of themselves? What do they do in the off season compared to the during the season, And in that same spirit, I guess, think about Olympic athletes. We get to see them on TV every 4 years. These are the world's best athletes. They're incredible. If you just sit there and appreciate what you're seeing on TV, they've worked their entire life for that moment.
Yeah.
And you're so right. They're very regimented on
Mhm.
whether it's nutrition, diet, exercise, sleeping patterns, you name it, what they put in their bodies, right? And just like us in this whole personal growth and business quest, what I consume up here in my mind ends
Yes.
up coming out of my mouth. And that's just as much a product of the environment like we were talking about earlier. But if the best do that, then how can I be an Olympic the equivalent of an Olympic athlete coach or the equivalent of an Olympic athlete customer service rep or
Yeah.
whatever you do, how can you be the Olympic level version of it?
Yeah.
And it's got
Yes.
to be regimented, it's got to be disciplined, and you've got to stick to what you know. You don't see Michael Phelps out there during the Summer Olympics back when he was performing doing the high jump. No,
Right.
Michael Phelps was meant to be in a freaking swimming pool. That's where you can find him for 16 hours a day.
Yeah. Yeah. I
That's
love
his
it.
strength zone, and nobody could do it better than him.
Yeah. Another example that I've heard or I've realized recently, I got my start in my career in startups. I don't know if you knew that, in tech startups. And if ever there was a hustle culture, tech startups in the early 2010s was it. And we had this vision of Mark Zuckerberg in his hoodie, coding 19 hours a day. And he probably did that at first because he was 19 years old. And that's, 20-year-olds have unlimited energy. And he was so inspired. But I heard him talk on Joe Rogan's podcast recently. And you know what he does now? He wakes up at a normal time. He does not look at his phone for the first 3 hours of the day. He goes surfing. He does MMA or some kind of fight, maybe it's jujitsu, one of those like things. He wrestles with his kids. Like he does all of that stuff before he tackles work. So this this image that we have of this like go 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 all the time hustler entrepreneur is not actually even real. Like I said, you can work from inspiration like that, but you're not going to sustain it, and you have to circle back to that practice of taking care of yourself.
Yeah. So perfect, spot on. I mean, yeah, I would echo everything. Is we don't have to be the sacrificial lamb
Mm-mm.
to our own business. I mean, like you're saying, why am I doing this in the first place? With us, it's real estate, it's coaching, it's entrepreneurism. Well, for somebody else, it might be different, but at the root of it, I've got to believe somewhere in there, yours is just like mine. It's about my family. It's about my kids, creating experiences and memories, not having to say no to them if we want to say yes, aside from them just being a spoiled brat. But in
Right,
context,
right.
you understand, like, why am I doing what I'm doing in the first place? If we just wake up to that once in a while,
Yeah.
we're going to stop grinding for 16-hour days and saying, huh, the very reason I'm doing this, when I say it's about my kids, for example, I only see my kids in the morning off to school and right before bed when I'm tucking them in. Like, what the heck? That's
Yeah.
not life. This is not some dress rehearsal. I shouldn't be that sacrificial lamb to the business when the business is actually meant to fund all the things that I want in life.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Oh, that's so true. I know I've talked about this some on our team calls, but I've taken to the start of my work day, and I don't pretend it's something else. It is my work is breath work, meditation, and journaling. I don't even post. We do a daily, for those of y'all listening, we in our at the locker room, we do a daily impact item and a daily win of the day. And we post in the morning and the evening, but I don't even post my impact item until I have breathed and meditated into it first. Like, what am I really doing today? But the trick for me, the mindset shift for me, was to stop acting like that was something outside of my work. That is the work. And there have been days where I didn't stop that until 10, 11 o'clock in the morning because I needed it to be in alignment so I could show up for the people in my life that day. And
Mhm.
then there are days where, a 20-minute session and I'm good and let's go get them. But I let that happen and I don't consider it extra. It is the work. And that turning that and also working out, being in the gym, that also happens during the workday sometimes. Not always, but sometimes. And I consider that the work. Us being strong, being physically fit, like that's part of the work. And it was a huge mindset shift for me to change that and make it, because when it wasn't part of the work, then I never had time for it. I needed to be making calls, sending emails, being on meetings, answering to everybody else. But when I allowed myself to make it part of the work, now everything else gets done. I don't feel like I'm like super behind on things because I put it in the work, or in the work day. But anyway, you have a
I'm
thought.
I do. I'm processing this real time. You can see me, so that's not fair.
Uh-huh.
You can tell something's going on up here. I've never said this, so let's see how this lands. But listening to what you're just saying right now and putting ourselves first and that morning routine and all of that in that same breath, what about this? D- Depending, regardless of someone's, spiritual or personal beliefs, right? Tithing, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Tithing, I'm to take 10% of what I earn and tithe it to the church, for example.
Yeah.
What if we need to start tithing time back to ourselves? Follow my
Ooh.
logic here.
Yeah.
Follow my logic. So if we can tithe money and it's 10%, right? What if I took 10% of my day and tithed it to myself?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let's look at this. Nerding out over here. If I'm going to put in an 8-hour workday, there's 60 minutes in an hour. So 8 times 60 is 480. What's 10% of that? 48 minutes.
Yeah.
What if in the morning, for example, like you're saying, I tithe 10% of my time back to me, which is 48 minutes for me to pray, meditate, work out, journal, just be
Yeah.
and do my breath work and clear my head and recenter myself before I go get the day. 48 minutes. You're welcome, future self. I'm donating that time that's so precious so I can show up and be the best version of me that I need to be today.
Yeah. And that's what I would say has been the biggest change since I started saying it that way. I say no to things that I know won't fit because if it's going to impinge on any of that, it's not in alignment. It's not going to work. So I say no to more things, which means I'm truly open for the things I say yes to. And then when I show up with my clients, when I show up on team meetings, you're not getting the burned out version of me. You're
Yeah.
getting the version of me that's resourced and ready to go.
And this is, I don't have to kiss your butt or anything, but I've been a front row witness to a lot of transitions and changes that you've
Yep.
frankly decided on over the last year or two. And it makes me think, again, I'm a quote guy, so I can't help it, but Change the way you look at things, and the things you look at change.
Yeah.
It started with your perspective, Monica. You changed the way you looked at things, and that set a pattern of disruption, in a good sense.
Yeah.
um Change the way you look at things, and the things that you look at change. Your perspective on the world, your entire paradigm has shifted of what's important, what's not important, what gets my energy, what doesn't get my energy, what gets my time. The whole transformation happened because you changed the way you looked at things. And
Yeah.
by the way, I just remembered what I was going to say earlier, talking about the recentering, in the whole breath work analogy. I like to give the audience little crunchy tips that, whether you hire Monica or anybody as a coach or a, partner in business or whatever, we want to equip you with ways that you can coach yourself. It's that
Yes.
self-awareness.
Yes.
Okay. Write this down. It's PITFAR, PTFAR, PTFAR, PITFAR. Your programming leads to your thoughts lead to your feelings lead to your actions, and your actions lead to your results. So if you're out there right now saying, I'm not getting the result I wanted, simply work backwards in that equation. What actions are you doing? Well, I'm not lead generating. I'm not need generating.
Yep.
Okay. Well, what are your feelings about that activity? Okay. What were your thoughts about that generated those feelings? And what was the programming from way back when in your childhood or something that you didn't even know you adopted as a thought, but you've accepted it as your reality? It's this deep inner working, but PTFAR, and then just reverse the order. Your audience can coach themselves and build that level of self-awareness. And that's where I was going with that earlier when I lost my train
Yeah.
of thought.
Yeah, no, I love that. I've used that thoughts, feelings, actions. I haven't added the programming before, so that's really
Yep.
good.
It's the
And do you
conditioning.
realize, side note, this Sunday it's 1 year since my one-on-one training with Jen in Jacksonville. It was December
Really?
11th.
I
Yes.
did not realize that.
Like on one hand, I can't believe it's already here, and it also feels like I've been with the locker room forever.
Right. Holy cow. I did
I
not
know.
know that.
That's awesome. So the pitfar. Let's dive into that a little bit because I think that's huge. And I think where we make a mistake, this has been another big aha. In fact, a breathwork friend and I were talking today about this thing. We think that all of those answers are going to be mindset questions. I just need to change my mindset on something. And mindset is incredible. You often do need to change your mindset. But there are some things that are so deeply embedded, they're in our bodies. So we can change our minds, but it's not going to change our actions. And that's where the programming comes in. And if
Exactly.
you are operating on I'm not good enough, I'm not articulate enough, if you were told as a kid that you needed to be quiet or anything, any number of things that your parents may or may not have meant to express to you, you've internalized that. Now it's in your body and you may not even realize you're operating on that.
Exactly. No, it's that conditioning. Watch out. And there's nothing scarier in a way for me as a parent, that like I never know what I'm going to say that one of my daughters just latches onto and creates a belief out of. Like, I mean, let's be real. As parents, we have our moments of frustration and like
Yeah.
it all boils over. And God forbid I ever say something that my amazing, beautiful, precious daughters adopt as truth to them.
Yeah.
It's that big responsibility we carry, and not to be so whatever about it, but that's life. Like, who am I interacting with? I bring back again the environment comment. Who am I surrounding myself with? Am I giving them energy and goodness, or taking it away? And they're like, oh, I can't stand to be around that Jake guy. Our words rather matter. And so again, who you surround yourself with, we adopt their language. What
Yep.
audiobooks are you listening to? Are you watching the news every single night and it's all this negative noise that you're filling your mind with? Be careful, because that shapes your language at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. So, so true. Um, I feel like I have like 10 questions popped into my head at one time. So I was like, oh wait, which one do I go with?
Right.
Um, let's dive into again, let's go back to the hustle piece because and let's apply that with the Pitfar analogy because I know that a lot of people will try to hustle. They'll, oh, okay, good. Now I have a way to get all the answers. okay, now I'm going to force myself to do the act. I'm not lead generating. I'm going to force myself, and they won't do the next step. Well, wait. What were your feelings around lead generating? What were your thoughts that led to those feelings? What was the programming that led to those thoughts? So what's some advice would you have for people who are like, okay, I want to break through. What next?
Oh my gosh, there's so many angles I could take that. I want to break through what's next. I just go back to the solid foundations because I can't, how should I say this? I can't completely control. Yes, I have a voice, I have a vote. But for example, I can't completely control who the president is in the White House. I can't control what the stock market's doing today. I can't control what the Fed or interest rates are doing tomorrow. I just can't. There's some things that are beyond my control. So the advice I would give is focus on what you can control. Protect that mindset of yours. Surround yourself with the right people. Go on a personal growth and development quest. And it never ends. You've never
Yeah.
arrived. You've never found the secret, pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. It's just that constant growth and development and progress. Am I better today than I was yesterday? Even if it's just by a fraction of a percentage. Hey, look, we have off days, we have great days. But as long as I'm putting one foot in front of the other, living a purpose-filled life, doing what I believe I was called to do, and tapping into my strength zone to do it, then I don't know how you can go wrong. Your definition of success will arrive maybe immediately, but certainly someday, as long as you just stay on the straight and narrow with that. And by the way, to give a little bit more substance to this whole strength zone thing, it's your natural behavioral style.
Yeah.
If you're into that, it's your transferable skills from prior careers and things that you can apply to now. It's what your best friend would say if asked, hey, what is Monica really good at? What does she make look so natural and easy?
Yeah.
Those are those gifts bottled up, that recipe is unique to you when you package them all together. Now go figure out how that applies to your work, and you will live a fulfilled, purpose-driven life that is now, in work-wise, now funding what you want to do with
Yeah.
your family and experiences and giving back to charities and whatever this is really about at the end of the day.
Yeah, yeah. I love every bit of that. And yeah, that strength zone, it's probably the thing that you take for granted. It's the thing that you think is no that you do that you think is no big deal, because you just think it's just how you are a person. But whatever that thing is probably what everyone else is in awe of you for.
Exactly. Yeah, you discount. It's such a great point. I'm so glad you said that because you're right. It is disguised as something that you probably discount. When
Mhm.
somebody asks, "How did you do it?" And like, "Oh, I don't know. I just
Yeah.
did it." No, you did something
Yep.
to create a disproportionate result compared to most other people. What
Yeah.
did you do? What did you say?
Yeah.
And so it's a great point for it to have that level of self-awareness to really not discount yourself.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
One other thing I have been thinking as we've been talking, and I know people who have worked really hard, and on the outside we thought they were doing really well, and then had extreme health scares. I back in August, right after our event, hurt my back, and it basically put me on my back for 2.5 months. I couldn't even I was doing literally the bare minimum just to like not forget to show up for my life, but other than that I was laid out. We know people who've had cancer. We know people who've had diseases that put them in the hospital. We know people that had COVID and it affected them more deeply than they felt like it should have, given their age and pre-existing conditions. And it was all because they were not taking care of themselves. So I want to throw out something kind of radical. If you are feeling like you're approaching burnout and you're kind of like and you're confused, I've also noticed confusion is a big early indicator of burnout. If you are confused about your life, you might be on the road to burnout, because when things are clear, and your confusion kind of takes a back seat. So if you're confused, if you feel stuck, if in any way possible, I would say start saying no to everything you can before your health says it for you. because there were quite a number of things I had to drop during that time that really clearly they were dropped, which means I didn't need to be doing them anyway. And I was able to get really down to the things that really matter and then rebuild what I wanted to add. But I think my advice, if you can find the courage to do that, is basically take a sabbatical to the deepest extent you can. And I will say the first few weeks, you're probably going to sit on the couch and not know what to do, and you're probably going to cry a lot. And if you just let yourself do that, it's going to start to clear up. But if you continue to try to fight through it or power through or anything like that, your health is eventually going to catch up to you.
You know, that's a big point, and I hope people just caught that, because if we study other leaders, right, be a student of the game, there's a consistency I found, for example, with people like John Maxwell, Steve Jobs, and who is the other one? Bill Gates.
Mm-hmm.
Reading certain things like autobiographies of how did they get to be so great, you know, at their craft. One of the consistencies is they will tell you they were very, very intentional about quiet space.
Yep.
They time blocked time just to sit in peace and quiet to clear their mind, and that's where they will tell you some of their best ideas, the best books John Maxwell's written was in that time.
Yep.
I think it was Steve Jobs maybe, who every year he would go for like 3 weeks to a cabin in the middle of nowhere, no internet service of any kind, and just be,
Yep.
you know. And that's a lot of what I think I hear you saying is consistent with what some of the greats that we often look up to and use products of theirs every single day in our daily lives have found, and we can learn a lot just by studying them.
Yeah. And that's essentially what Mark Zuckerberg was saying in that interview is like those hours in the day are actually his most creative, but also what makes him able to solve problems once he does tune back into the workday.
Yeah.
But it was very scary to be injured, to feel like everything was falling away and not sure what was going to happen next. But one of the things we talk about in some of my circles is be like the buffalo. Do you know what buffalo do in a thunderstorm? Have you heard this?
I don't know.
Okay, so buffalo in a thunderstorm will turn and run into the storm, so they get through it faster. Domesticated cattle will turn and run from the storm, so they're running longer because the storm is eventually the storm's eventually going to catch up, and then they're in the rain longer. But buffalo will turn and head into a storm. So we like to say, be like the buffalo. If there's as you go through the pit fire, if there's some thought, feeling, programming that you are kind of like, oh crap, I don't like that very much, I would encourage you to turn and run into the storm, because it really, really sucks, but it sucks for less time than if you try to run away from it.
Those are some deep thoughts right there. I just got schooled by Monica. That's good stuff. I love
It's
that.
one of my favorite analogies, the be the buffalo, because I think a lot of times we discount the greats, the meditative process, the things that they went through that, you know, you're right, they all say it. They all have reading time or thinking time, or they all go out in the woods, or they took a sabbatical and spent a year in India or whatever. They all have it. And we forget that part. And we only look at the days that they worked 18-hour days. And that's just not how creativity or health works.
No, you're right. It's the unseen, you know. It's no different than counting the calories in the food. Nobody sees that. They just see the physique and what you look like after all those decisions combined together. And maybe it's oversharing, but as I sit here, I was messaging Carissa earlier that occasionally I'll get these like little flutters, like heart flutter, like palpitations or something. And you know, you look it up and Google can scare you to death or whatever. And some of it's just caffeine or stress related or whatever. But it's like, oh my God, it's I need to go get that looked at or get checked, because I don't want to burn out or literally, you know, terminate myself, because I have a lot more I want to do and give, and a lot more people I want to help. And so we've only got one shot at this thing called life and body, as far as I know, and I want to make it count. And to do so, we've got to protect ourselves and certainly the health and well-being. Otherwise, we're good to nobody.
Yeah. Well, go get that checked out and go spend. I know it's cold up there, but get outside some more.
Yeah,
She
exactly.
says, having not left the house today because it's cold and rainy.
Yeah. Yeah. So there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Jake. Before we kind of sign off, any closing thoughts, maybe for agents or entrepreneurs who are starting to feel that burnout and that stress?
Just listen. Find that quiet space and listen. Your gut, your intuition, whatever your belief is, that whisper, it's telling you something. So listen, trust your intuition, and don't try and drown it out amongst the noise that's so loud around us. If it's to go for it, go for it.
Yeah.
Don't second guess yourself. If it's to pause and take a break, pause and take a break. Your body, your mind is telling you that for a reason, right? I believe whatever spiritual energy or what, higher being your belief system is, we need to listen more in a world that's really, really noisy.
Yeah. Mic drop right there. That's it. Jake, where can people find you and connect? Of course, I'll have the locker room site in our in the show notes, but where can they find you?
Yeah, me personally, I am all over Facebook. I mean, it looks like
Yeah.
I'm all over Instagram and all these other things. That's not me. That's our team doing that.
Yep.
So the best place, if anybody needs anything, is to find me on Facebook, or email lockerroomcoaching@gmail.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jake. This has been awesome.
Thank you. Thank you.